Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to take a look at the next important sequence that Venus is going through. This is really important because Venus is about to appear as the evening star after a very long period of invisibility that dates back to April's eclipses, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, and everything that has happened since then, which has often reiterated the Jupiter-Uranus dynamic in Taurus. We just had the Mars-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. And so we also had a Mercury square Uranus in Taurus. It's very important to think about that event, Jupiter-Uranus conjoining in April, as not just a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, but as a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that was speaking to something that Venus will provide. Like Venus has to provide the fruits of that revolution. In other words, since that happened, Venus has been gradually going through invisibility to appear again as the evening star, which means that she's about to bring forth the fruits of her labor. So we're going to talk about that today and what to expect from Venus over the next couple of weeks, just kind of giving ourselves that big, broad perspective that is nice to do from time to time. And then we zoom in and look very closely at things and we try to zoom back out. So anyway, that's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're watching the channel and you haven't subscribed, you watch it regularly, we would super appreciate you clicking the subscribe button because that's how we grow and support and sustain everything that we do. We really appreciate it. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com, where I want to point out some of the new upcoming live talks that I'm doing in the next few months. In August, if you go to the live events page under the events tab, you'll see the 8th house, the place of karmic debts, a webinar I'm doing on August 22nd. Venus's 12 love languages, looking at Venus through the 12 signs. That is going to be on September 19th. And then the myth of astrological compatibility, what everybody gets wrong about the astrology of relationships, on October 17th. Hear my opinion about that topic, which I think there's a lot of room for people to grow in their understanding of astrological compatibility techniques. So I'm going to speak about that and give you my little soapbox about the topic. Anyhow, I hope you'll check those out. Hope to see you at some of those events. If you cannot attend any of those events live, you do get the recordings sent to you afterwards. So that is how that works. All right, let's take a look at the real-time clock. And I want to show you what is happening. Let's go backward just a touch. So you can see today, Tuesday, July 23rd, Venus is at 14 Leo and the sun is at 1 Leo. This means that they are about 13 degrees apart. Typically, on average, it is about 15 degrees of separation that a planet needs to be visible. Once it's under that 15, it becomes invisible. That's an average. So as we move along, we'll see that they are now 13 degrees up. Here, they're about 14 degrees apart. We're coming into the very end of July, and they get to be about 15 degrees apart by the 29th of July. And I was looking at an astronomy website that said, watch for Venus appearing in the evening sky the last couple days of July. So here we have it. Venus will appear as the evening star, hanging low in the western horizon after sunset, right around the end of July. And as she does so, coming through a square to Uranus. So that square to Uranus will then perfect into August. And the square happens between the 1st of August and the 2nd of August. So it's that sequence that we are going to pay close attention to. The reason we are paying close attention to that is that Venus appears as the ruler of the Jupiter-Uranus dynamic. And so this is, in a sense, the first chance that Venus has had to contact Uranus in a dynamic way since the conjunction, and she was the ruler of it. This is another important moment in the unfolding of the promise or karma, so to speak, of that conjunction. As soon as they conjoined, if you back this up, here's what I want to show you. Let's go back in time to understand this a little bit more. So look at what was happening in May. So as the two planets, Jupiter and Uranus, were getting together in Venus's sign, Venus was going under the beams of the sun. Just entering the beams of the sun. So this Jupiter-Uranus dynamic, in other words, is part of a transformation that Venus was undergoing. The Jupiter-Uranus revolutionary moment is reflected by a transforming Venus. Venus goes through the under the beams of the sun and goes through the conjunction to Uranus in middle of May, and then the conjunction with Jupiter about the end of May, and then goes through the cazimi about the very beginning of June, or here's about June 6th. That's a sort of reset moment. Of course, that was in a square with Saturn. And then from there, we have Venus gradually moving. A really important moment for Venus was the opposition to Pluto about mid-July that we experienced. And now Venus is reaching that point of visibility and then immediately hitting the square to Uranus. And that, in a sense, completes the cycle. That is like one of the most powerful moments in the cycle, yet maybe one of the most underrated, because we're not looking at things from a process-oriented standpoint. We're looking at them from an event-oriented standpoint. That is something that a lot of astrologers do. I've done it in the past. Only over time have I learned to really see the astrology from a more process-oriented perspective, which allows us to understand stories as they are unfolding in parts and stages and chapters rather than just one-off events. It does take a little bit of tracking and getting used to, and sometimes can be very overwhelming when you're learning astrology. It's like, oh God, how, events are a little bit easier to track because they're just very vivid ways of understanding archetypes. Like right now, there's a way of looking at Venus squaring Uranus coming up at the beginning of August that exists in a vacuum. Like it's just going to be a very like Venus-Uranus dynamic. And if you're understanding that alone in a kind of vacuum, that's enough. That's enough to progress and advance in your understanding of astrology, learning the language of astrology. However, if you're also able to tie that back to the development of Venus that's been happening since her transformation going under the beams as the ruler of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, then you're starting to play at a different level. And eventually we want to get there, even if you're not there yet. So all of that is just to say that this moment of visibility that is coming, so here's the way of looking at it. You can think about it as like something that's been cooking in the oven is ready to be taken out and the dish is ready to be served. So what if think of all the metaphors, the analogies you can come up with. Something that has been going on invisibly behind the scenes, alchemically, psychologically, in a more unconscious space is now ready to be seen and ready to be made conscious. Something you've been prepping for, something you've been developing, something you've been working on might be ready to bear its fruits or to be seen publicly. Changes in relationships are about to bear fruit. The transformative process of Venus dying and being reborn as the ruler of a revolutionary Venusian moment is about to express the fruits of that revolution, at least the early fruits of it, or an important stage or step in the process. As this happens, the fact that Venus is squaring Uranus means that when she's coming out, she's got something a little provocative to say or share, or the way in which she comes forth is going to be defying our expectations, or might include some need to, fly up the, what am I thinking of? Like to display the plumage of the peacock. There's very Venus-Uranus image. As Venus appears, remember that she is a part of a revolutionary impulse. And so when she appears again, like, oh, now we can see her. Here she is. She's been through the underworld. She's come out. And what she brings forth is Uranian. It is a shift, a radical transformation of beauty, love, sex, relationships, pleasure, ease, what it means to feel good, what it means to look good, what our values are. We're ready to embody some kind of revolutionary shift with respect to Venus. So if you ask me, where can you see this? There are two places to look. The best places to look in your chart for where you'll see that fruit kind of coming forth are going to be the houses of Taurus and Leo. Now, the reason that I say that is because the Jupiter-Uranus dynamic was obviously in Taurus, Uranus is in Taurus, and Venus is making her appearance coming out of that whole transformative process in Leo, where she's also squaring Uranus. So look at that square in the houses, in the house topics between Taurus and Leo. Another thing to think about is Taurus is in the middle of spring, astrologically speaking, symbolically speaking. So Taurus is about the development of what we consider to be pleasurable, beautiful, valuable, what creates ease, peace, security, what enhances our sense of happiness, and at the same time, a sense of like peaceful control, stability. So all of those qualities are related with the middle of spring and the rising of light toward its apex. You get to Leo, the sun is starting to come down and mortality is coming back. And Leo the lion is a bit more, I don't want to say mature because that makes it sound like one is better than the other, but it's more mature. Is like if you think about the different stages that like a flower goes through, you don't think of, you might use the word mature, but you don't think about one stage as better than another, even though it's more mature in like a linear time sense. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so Leo is a little bit more mature in terms of the story, which is a circle, by the way. But when you get to Leo, you're thinking about the light having to display a sense of stability, but it is rather than on the rise of light, which is so youthful and optimistic and idealistic, you're having to establish a sense of security amidst the growing awareness of mortality, which is like later in the story. And so these two signs are reflecting a more mature Venus, a Venus that is just as interested in peace, love, harmony, stability, all the kind of idealistic, beautiful, springy things, that reflect the need to stabilize life if it's still in the process of growing and expanding. And then you see a Venus in Leo that's interested in the stability of Venusian things with respect to a growing awareness of mortality, of death, the more mature stage of life where we kind of have to go, what am I living for that lives beyond me and beyond the enjoyment of a world, because I know the world will end someday and the enjoyment won't be forever. So that when you put those two things together, it's like, what is the most mature view of both meaning and happiness, of both pleasure and legacy, of what we're living for that lives beyond us, and also what we're living for that's immediately in front of us. Those two are in an intimate conversation right now. You could look at it that way too. All right. I'm recording this on my birthday, a week in advance. So I'm going to cut this one short because I want to go enjoy my birthday. My solar return is fucked. You guys, my solar return is so screwed. I've got sorry, I just popped out of me. My solar return has the moon in Scorpio opposite Mars and Uranus and Taurus. Like, it's funny, like the energy, it's sort of like the way I would describe the energy that I feel around this transit, right? And I'm obviously speaking to something that we all experienced a week ago, and I don't know how you guys felt about it, but the way I felt about it, am feeling about it, was like there's this combination of wanting to do something like really rebellious and defiant, and like a powerful emotional charge around that, and also like this total aversion to doing anything. It's like Taurus, Scorpio, Mars, Uranus, Taurus. Anyway, I think it's going to be an interesting year. And I actually don't get super afraid of astrological transits. I don't. It's like, I think that this is meant, these archetypes are meant to help us live a life that is more aware and reflective and conscious. And if I'm going to take all of that and go use it as an opportunity to become more unconscious and afraid, it's like, let's grow. Let's learn. I trust the universe. I trust that I'm an eternal being that has no beginning or end. I trust that you are. I trust that the planets are not out to get me. I trust that even when the worst things happen in the scope of eternity, it is okay. Something that I regularly think about, I know some of you are going to think this is kind of morbid. I regularly go, you know what's crazy? If you really zoom out and think about it, our sun is going to burn out someday. Like our star will burn out. None of this will be around. Like the entirety of like the human story, and there's so many stories here on Earth, but the entirety of the human story in the scope of eternity will be really nothing more than like a beautiful bubble rising to the surface and popping on a river. You know, it's like I have to go there. I like maybe it's just because there's something demented about me. But like I have to go there like a couple times a week and just remember that and be like, yeah, okay. Anyhow, so I'm not stressing, but I do want to go eat some eat some unforgivable food. All right. Love you all. Bye.